Hi, Marie.
Hi, Scotch Trekker.
You've got that backwards. It's Czech Scotcher today because in this episode we enter the mirror.
So in this episode, we start off with finding out finally who's been sending out the distress signal. We see Booker be gently let down by Captain Saru. That's going to be continuing, I'm sure. We see that Admiral Vance is a pretty sound guy. He understands what it's like not just to be an admiral in Starfleet, but to understand what it's like to have crew and get their respect. And let's face it, the big thing, we're back in the Empire. The Mirror Universe is back. And we see that Burnham is just about to try and overthrow Giorgio. It was fast-paced. It was an exciting episode. Scotch Trekker, what were some of the highlights for you?
I would say there weren't really any.
Okay.
The entire episode was quite unmemorable for me, to be honest.
Okay. Right. Let's break it down then to maybe some of your maybe some of the things that stood out but weren't highlights.
There's a heck of a lot that stood out for me that were sort of like reasons why I really didn't enjoy this episode. In fact, I would call it my least favorite of the seasons so far.
Okay.
By far.
Okay. So we found out that the ship was a Kelpian ship, which I called.
Yeah.
I was quite excited when I saw a Kelpian there. How did you feel about that?
I felt like really underwhelmed. I felt significantly underwhelmed by the episode in general, and especially by the aspect of it, because, I was wanted to be a Starfleet ship that I thought would be cooler. However, having said that, you did guess correctly. Well done. But it was going to be a Kelpian ship. And at the time, I was interested in that theory because it was one that I didn't think of. But yeah, it didn't really have like the sort of appeal or fan pool that I think that they would have been better to include. I thought it wasn't very well done, and I thought especially taking an entire episode, an entire week to reveal it was a Kelpian ship when they could very well have done that last episode and not have it built up so much.
Yeah, so maybe almost like a cliffhanger or something like that at the end of last week. Okay. Yeah. I think obviously we've got Saru as the captain. It's with him and the arc that he's made through the 3 seasons of Discovery. I think that this is going to be a big thing for him, and we are invested in Saru. I can understand how people would be more excited for it to be a Starfleet. And you've got the fact that it was 100 years ago that message was sent. So it'll be interesting to see what they find out further about this. So I take that point.
I thought it was actually more surprising and sort of a better reveal when in the previous episodes, Saru finds out that the Kelpians joined the Federation.
There's a scene quite at the beginning where Burnham asks if they can take Giorgio to the planet, and Saru says no, but Admiral Vance overrules him. And Admiral Vance has a conversation with Saru saying that if you do let, I understand the reasons why, but if you do let a member of your crew die, your crew will look at you differently and you'll look at yourself differently. And I thought that was quite a powerful scene between the two of them. What were your thoughts on that scene?
I think I was distracted at that point by how untrustworthy I believe Admiral Vance is. I don't think it's Starfleet or the Federation that's in this timeline. I think the series is being quite deceptive in making it seem that they are the Federation and the Starfleet, which I don't think they are. I think they're like too conceitful, too deceptive. I don't trust it.
In season 1, we had Lorca being a bad guy for what, 6, 7, 8 episodes, and we didn't realise. Are you thinking that they are trying to pull the wool over our eyes again for this season?
Well, a lot of people did realise that Lorca was like acting out of sorts and theorised that it was from the Mirror Universe. Theories that I was aware of at the time, but I didn't personally subscribe to. But yes, I do think they're doing the same thing again. Where Admiral Vance is not actually trustworthy and unbelievable.
Okay.
But we'll see.
Okay. I thought the cinematography in this episode was excellent. When Giorgio and Burnham landed on the snow desert, the camera work was just amazing. It was just beautiful. It just looked like they'd appeared on that. There was no footprints, and then there was the beautiful footprints leading to them. I thought that looked amazing. Your thoughts on that one?
I felt really let down by the imagery. I kept thinking this is really much like Star Trek 6 on the Discovered Country, where they visit the planetoid Rura Penthe that's very snowy. But I thought like the cinematography, because it is a television episode, it's like noticeably nowhere near as sort of extensive and elaborate as the cinematography in the film. So yeah, I didn't think this episode was anywhere near the same level as that. But yeah, I kept being reminded of that because of the similarity of the landscape.
Okay. When they get to their final point, when they are doing the travelling, Giorgio and Burnham, they meet Carl with his door. I was reminded, whilst I was watching that scene, of Q.
There were a wealth of references that it reminded me of, and I've since learned there are other references actually in that scene that I hadn't realised while watching the scene. I thought the guy Carl was very much like the Q. I would say it especially reminded me of the Q in the Voyage episode Death Wish, because you've got like people appearing basically out of like nowhere, appearing abruptly. It also reminded me of like some of the Doctor Who episodes where they're Time Lords that appear, and they're quite similarly dressed and stuff like that. And also the door itself, it reminded me of the Iconian gateways in The Next Generation, and to a little bit to 2001: A Space Odyssey. I was really fascinated to learn that the newspaper the guy's holding, that Carl's holding, is actually a newspaper that's featured in the original series episode, The City on the Edge of Forever. There's multiple references back to the previous track. So yeah, I thought it was a really cool scene, and probably my highlight of this episode.
Yeah, it was a good scene, and I think he's pretty cool as an actor. I'm a big fan of his as an actor.
Oh, right, cool.
Okay, so then she goes through the door and she's in the Mirror Universe. Were you expecting that?
No, and it really let me down. I think because my hopes have been built up for this episode, after seeing the initial scene from the episode, where there's an alien called Yor who's wearing an early TNG uniform, who's said to be from the same timeline as the Arrivalist and the Rada created, that's called the Kelvin timeline, unofficially, I believe, because it's not called that in canon. But Michael and Denise Okuda, who worked on a lot of the previous Star Trek, they came up with the term the Kelvin timeline. So I was really excited that I thought more in this episode would feature the Kelvin timeline. However, that obviously turned out not to be the case. There was only the initial scene that featured that crossover. And actually, it's not only a crossover between the Prime Universe and the Kelvin timeline, but also in the companies, because the movies were done by Paramount. There was a split between Paramount and CBS, but they've recently come back together, which has allowed the scene to be included in this episode. The TV series has been done by CBS since they had to split. So yeah, basically I was building my hopes up that there would be more included from the Kelvin timeline in this episode, and I thought that it was really disappointing that not only do they go back to the mirror universe, but they go back to a time period in the mirror universe that we already know exactly what happened in that time, because that's before they go to before they go to the mirror universe in the second half of the first season of Discovery. So it's already well established what happens at that timeline. So there's not much they can really introduce that would be new, which were my thoughts at the time. But then,
as the episode continued,
then they go, yeah, as the episode continues, Giorgio stabs Stamets, which obviously changes the timeline because he's alive in the second half of the first season, whereas obviously she killed him. I thought, well, maybe I can't. While watching it, I kept thinking maybe he's not dead. Maybe he will recover. But no, it's clearly
he looked very dead on that floor as that for that scene, didn't he?
Yeah, for sure.
And the way her attitude towards the Kelpians is evident because of her relationship with Saru on board the Discovery. In season 1, she was just so happy to eat Kelpian ganglia. She was, she saw those threat ganglia as the sweetmeats, and just one of the worst scenes of that first season, I felt. But now, after her spending so much time with Saru and having a respect for Kelpians, there's now a different relationship between them and her in this episode. You look uncomfortable. You didn't like that.
I'm not uncomfortable. It's just the fact that, yes, you're right, and that the viewer knows that, but obviously she's still having to act that, that she has this dislike of the Kelpians. Everyone around her doesn't know what she's experienced while she's been away.
Yeah, I suppose what I'm trying to say is Giorgio has changed, and whilst we knew, or we thought we knew, what had happened and in that time period, this is a different Giorgio, and that's now evident. We can see that.
So I was disappointed that it went to the mirror universe again, and even given that, I was disappointed it didn't even go into who Sand was or what it is, or none of that's explained yet. So yeah, that I found annoying as well.
Okay. Do you think that her not killing Burnham was a good thing or a bad thing at the end of the episode?
Well, I thought it was a good thing, because anything that can take it off the timeline where it's already been, I think it is a really good thing. So I'm glad they're going that direction.
Okay.
At least, yeah.
Okay.
What did you think of the portrayal of Mirror Burnham?
Oh, I thought she was brilliant. I think that it showed the range of Sonequa. It shows just how different the two Burnhams are, and I just enjoyed watching this totally different Burnham. It was enjoyable to watch. What about yourself?
Yeah, I was impressed by her range and differing that portrayal from her usual portrayal of the Prime Burnham.
I've read quite a lot online of people getting a little frustrated, let's put it that way, about the way that there's a lot of whispering with Burnham. There's a lot of heated whispering with the acting that's coming in. And I don't believe that Mirror Universe Burnham does much whispering. I think it's mainly a lot of shouting and killing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would also say that I was not only impressed by the range in performance between the two portrayals of Burnham, but also the difference between those characterizations, which, okay, I'm not so much impressed by if you just take it with the Prime Burnham, but especially with the Mirror Burnham, the difference between that portrayal and how Sonequa Martin Green is in reality.
Oh yes, yeah, she's a beautiful Christian mother and wife, and
very emotive.
Yes.
What did you think of Carl?
I was surprised at the character of Carl. It brought me back to the days of Q, the mischievous, fun Q, probably around the Voyager time of Q. I was thinking a little bit of Q and the Grey, where he is, first of all, at the start of the episode, trying to talk Janeway into mating with him. Excuse me. At the start of the episode, where he's trying to convince Janeway to mate with him, and his attitude is very fun-like and mischievous. And as soon as he started talking and he was making puns, and I just thought I thought Q straight away.
Okay, well, yeah. It kept occurring to me that maybe it's a member of the Q, but I didn't think it would be like John Delancey's Q. I think it's more likely that he's part of the Q.
I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that he's part of the Q continuum. There's a tiny pause when they say, "Who are you?" And he said something like, "Carl." And I was like, "Oh, are you about to say Q?" So I'd love to see him in it more anyway, just as an actor. So
yeah. So what did you think of how this episode changes the timeline with the death of Stamets?
I was really surprised at that. When you first see Stamets in the Mirror Universe, or it might not have been the first time, it's the first time I proper noticed him in this episode. He was towards the back talking to Culber at the party scene. And he just stands differently. He just exudes nastiness. And when he then goes on the stage and he's the compere or the narrator for this sycophantic operatic show for the Emperor. And I just thought, yeah, that's the sycophant that we saw in the first season. And I was really surprised when she killed him. As to how this is going to change it, I genuinely have no idea where this is going now. I have no idea. I'm really looking forward to seeing how this is going to play out. When the camera was coming down to see Stamets' dead body, I think he was twisted. And there is an in-joke in Family Guy that whenever anybody dies, they're always twisted. And I kept thinking of that. Moving on.
But I liked how I thought that the party scene was quite similar to the party aboard Discovery in the first season episode Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad. But obviously a mirror version of that sequence, which originally is a sequence in the Prime universe. So I thought that was quite cool.
Which, by the way, is probably the best episode of that season for me. I loved that episode, which Stamets plays a huge part in as well. And it's got Harry Mudd in that one as well. So
yeah,
that's always a good one.
What was your favourite part of this episode, and what downsides did you find in the episode?
I do think that you and I might have been watching different episodes. I really liked that small conversation between Admiral Vance and Saru. I felt that he was talking to Saru from an experienced position, trying to explain to him that yes, I understand that we have this big mission, but sometimes being a leader, you have to think of your crew. So I liked that part of the episode. I really enjoyed seeing the stunning white and these two figures. It reminded me a little bit of the first episode of Discovery when they were in the sand desert.
Yeah, the Kropotkin in the homeworld.
Yeah, and we were first seeing the two characters, and at that point they were captain and first officer, I believe, and they would do anything for each other. So it was quite a nice sort of come back to that point where Burnham was trying to be that again for Georgiou, even though it's not her captain. And when she walked through the door and Tilly was there as Captain Killy, that was a bit of a highlight for me, because I was like, yes.
Okay, cool. So what downsides did you find in this episode?
Downsides. I always find it a little bit uncomfortable when I see the Kelpians as slaves and they talk about how they're going to eat them. I find that slightly uncomfortable viewing. I wasn't a huge fan of when, and I don't know their character name, so you'll have to help me, when they were having the fight.
Washington and Reese, or Owo, she's called for short.
Okay, yeah, wasn't overly keen on that one, because that one was quite, but I did like that Georgiou said loyalty will always win. Yeah, no, I enjoyed this episode.
Would you say it's better or worse than the previous one?
I really enjoyed the previous episode, really. But this one was, if I gave 4.5 for the previous episode, this one's definitely 4 out of 5. What out of 5 would you give this one?
Probably 1. I kept thinking that while I was watching it.
Okay.
Yeah. So thanks for co-hosting this episode, Marie. I agree with you. Maybe we're watching different episodes, but maybe we're watching the Mirror Universe and the Prime Universe. Who knows? Thanks for watching, guys. Remember to like and subscribe to this video, please. See you next time on the Scotch Checker, or is it the Czech Scorcher? Engage.
Long live the Empire.